Hey, this past week as we're following Jesus to the empty tomb, we saw that not only was Jesus murdered, but there were fingerprints left at the crime scene, and they were left there for two very good reasons. Let me read that scripture to you one more time from Matthew chapter 27, beginning in verse 45. From noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came over all the land. And at about 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? And when some of those standing there heard this, they said, well, he's calling Elijah. And immediately one of them ran and got a sponge. He filled it with wine vinegar, he put it on a staff, and he offered it to Jesus to drink. The rest of them said, now leave him alone, let's see if Elijah comes to save him. And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. And at that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth shook, the rocks split, and the tombs broke open. The bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. They came out of the tombs after Jesus' resurrection, and they went into the holy city, and they appeared to many people. And verse 54 says, when the centurion and those who were with him, who were guarding Jesus, saw the earthquake and all that had happened, they were terrified, and they exclaimed, surely he was the Son of God. And many women were there, watching from a distance. They'd followed Jesus from Galilee to care for his needs. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons. You know, what we looked at is the most painful scene in Jesus' earthly life. The beatings that he went through prior to the cross were bad, but nothing is worse than the cross. And in the midst of the pain of this day in his earthly life, we looked at 5 fingerprints that were left. And so this morning, I'm just going to give those to you briefly. All right. The first fingerprint is the sun darkened. Matthew says it was from the 6th hour to the 9th hour. And if you understand the Jewish system of time, Jesus was nailed to the cross at 9 in the morning. Now it's the 6th hour, which is noon, lunchtime, when the sun should have been brightest in the sky, and darkness fell over the land and lasted 3 hours. Douglas Webster said, at the birth of the Son of God, there was brightness at midnight, and at the death of the Son of God, there was darkness at noon. That's fingerprint number 1. Here's the second one. It's found in the temple. We're told that the temple veil was torn from top to bottom. It was this veil was this huge woven, 4 inches thick, 60 feet long, 30 feet wide. And in the temple, this ornately decorated blue curtain separated the Holy of Holies from the rest of the temple. The Holy of Holies, it was a place so sacred that it could only be entered once a year and only by one person and only for a few minutes. This kind of separation between the Holy of Holies and the rest of the temple it signified the unapproachable holiness of God. Torn. Third fingerprint was the earthquake. Verse 51, at that moment the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth shook and the rocks split. You know, an earthquake powerful enough to split rocks would be a significant tremor. And although earthquakes were a fairly common phenomenon in the region of Judea, a quake with enough force to split rocks would have instantly brought the entire city of Jerusalem to a halt for several minutes. As a fingerprint. Here's the fourth. Listen, and it doesn't get a lot of attention today, although I would think it did then. The dead raised. That's verse 52, and the tombs broke open. The bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life, and they came out of the tombs after Jesus' resurrection, and they went into the holy city, Jerusalem, and appeared to many people. You know by now that the tombs in and around Jerusalem to this very day are cave-like burial chambers. The earthquake was evidently powerful enough to split tombs like these open, and those who emerged from the broken tombs had been raised from the dead. I would think that'd get your attention. All right, the last fingerprint, changed lives. Verse 54, it's the centurion and those who were with him who were guarding Jesus. When they saw the earthquake and all that had happened, they were terrified, and they exclaimed, surely this was the Son of God. Now, a Roman centurion, to be sure, was the commander of a 100-man division, and centurions were usually career officers, hardened men of war. And it appears he's the very one who had been given charge of overseeing and carrying out the crucifixion of Jesus. And when he had heard Pilate repeatedly declare Jesus' innocence, and then he heard Jesus pray for his accusers and killers, and they heard him cry out to his Father, they experienced this supernatural darkness followed by an earthquake, changed his life. Listen, why would God leave so many fingerprints at the cross? But maybe here's what's maybe the better question for today. What fingerprints of God can you see in your own life?